TFL EV is brought to you by Flow Charger, maker of reliable, high-quality charging stations for your electric vehicle. Hey guys, have you ever wondered what happens when you upsize your tires on an electric truck? Well, in this video we're going to find that out because there is our Hummer EV, and if you look closely, you'll notice that it looks a little bit different. I would say better, and that's because thanks to our friends at BFG, we've now gone with a mud terrain, the KM3, and if you look over here, you'll notice that it is a 37. The other good thing about this one is that it has a load rating of E, which is important when you've got a 9,000 pound truck. So in this video, we're going to do not a range test, because obviously what we want to know is how much does your range decrease when you up tire or you go with a bigger tire. Now we not only did go well with a bigger tire, but we also went with a different wheel, and I love that wheel. That's a GMC Hummer wheel that matches or picks up this gold color right there. It's in this first edition Hummer EV, and I got to tell you, from a aesthetic point of view, I think these tires and wheels are like, well, like a cherry on the sundae. They just look so good, much more beefier. I mean, look at these treads. That is what you want on what I think General Motors engineers would say is a truck that eats dinosaurs. Think Raptor, think TRX or T-Rex for breakfast. But the question is, what happens when you road trip this vehicle? Now, as you know, or maybe you don't know, a couple months ago we took this to Moab and we found that it didn't do that well because the air suspension kind of gave up, and we thought, you know what, a better way to solve that is the traditional way, by going up from a 35 to a 37. So I'm here in Silverthorne where it's starting to snow, and I'm charging up because I'm heading to Moab to do an off-road video to see if 37s have actually solved the problem of this truck being the ultimate off-road EV. Now, there are a couple ways you could figure out how much range you lose or how much more energy it takes, you know, to take those down the highway. One would be to do a range test, but since I'm going to Moab, I'm not going to do that. We're going to concentrate on something that I think is much more important, and that's this right here. Let me show you. The way that you, of course, judge how good a fuel economy a car gets or a truck gets that is powered by an internal combustion engine is by MPG. Now, we got the same thing with an electric vehicle, but it just happens to be, oh, I know, it's possible. It happens to be miles per kilowatt hour. Now, let me show you. I've just reset this, and when it's reset, it says I'm getting 1.5 miles per kilowatt hour. And actually, the math is pretty straightforward, because what happens is we know that this truck has the biggest battery of any electric vehicle. Oh, wow, it's really starting to snow. 250 kilowatt hour battery. And so from that number, you can calculate how much range you'd get on a full charge. So that number is not what I'm getting. That's completely reset. So I'm curious to see what that actually goes down to. Now, to put it in perspective, we just bought a Bolt EV, and that gets, oh gosh, 3.7, 3.8 miles per kilowatt hour. In other words, the equivalent of, like, 40 or 35 mpg. Now, our Lightning that we owned for a long time, that on a good day may have gotten 2 miles per kilowatt hour. And we put the camper on, and when we put the off-road tires on, it was down to about 1.6. So the question we'll be answering in this video is just how low will that number get? Now, Hummer says this truck has a range with the 35 of about 350 miles. But if that number gets down to about 1.0, you know that we've cut our range by about 100 miles because 1.0 times 250 is 250 miles, right? So, yeah, I mean, 37s are big tires. Let's go back outside. I'll show you those tires again. I should turn the wheel so you can see the tread pattern. These are big tires and a lot of unsprung weight. Takes a lot more to roll these things down the road than it would a regular tire. But, aesthetically, I gotta say, they just look really meaty. really great. I mean, look at those treads. Now that is a meaty tread. And you're wondering why we didn't go with all-terrains, and it has to do with that load factor. We had to get a load factor that would handle all the weight. Plus, of course, if you're towing or hauling, that weight goes up. So that's why we went with the mud terrains. But I'm also a fan of mud terrains, but they are not probably the least efficient tires. In other words, these things probably have the most rolling resistance of any tire that I could think of. On the other hand, they're incredibly robust and really good off-road, which, by the way, we'll also figure out when I take it off-road in Moab. Hopefully, if it doesn't snow too much, I don't want a snow wheel. We also put the 37 out here on our spare tire. And let's see what we're charging at. That's pretty slow, 129 kilowatts. Wow, 31 minutes left to get to 80%. Could be because it's cold. This truck has the ability to charge up to 350, 800 volt architecture, and right now we're far from that. But once again, you don't know if that's a truck or if that's a charger. But the good news is that we are here and on our way to Moab. Wow, that's a cool car. My mom had one of those back in the day, a Subaru, was it SVX? I can take a look in a second. The one downside I have immediately found to these big old KM3s, and you can tell they do throw up a lot of dirt. But you know, we've had Raptors in the past, and they all do that. So unless you want to get bigger mud flaps, that's going to be one of the prices you'll pay. But in terms of off-road ability, in terms of giving you more ground clearance, and in terms of just looking really, really off-road worthy and properly meaty, I can't think of a better look than this. All right, so let's find out how bad or how much we've decreased our efficiency by going to this all-terrain. And we can know the base number, and that is when we had the 35s, we were getting about 1.5, 1.6 miles to the kilowatt. I always get that backwards. Yeah, I think that's right. Anyway, and we'll see how low it goes. All right, join me at the next charger where we'll have actually a better idea of what kind of efficiency this thing has now that we've gone with, I think, a bigger, better, and let's face it, cooler tire. All right, as we're almost done charging, there are a few other things we have to discuss. First and foremost, there's this. So GM doesn't give you a percentage of battery, which would be nice. They just give you these little clicks. The only time you get a percentage of battery is actually when you stop the vehicle. So I've got 270 miles of range, but that's a guesstimate at best. So don't take that. And I think that means it's up to 80%. So I'll stop charging in a second. The other thing that we need to talk about are the tires. Now, they're mud and snow rated, which makes them all seasons, which you'd think they're snow tires because obviously I'll be driving in the snow, but they're not. They're not snow peak rated. So the good news is the Hummer is all-wheel drive all the time. There are different modes. Let me show you those. But there is no snow mode. So there's my mode, there's off-road mode, there's terrain mode, there's tow haul, and there's normal, but no snow mode. So I'll just have to drive carefully. But what's also hard is it's hard to distinguish between how much energy we're using to condition the battery versus upsizing the tires. And unfortunately, I can't separate those two things out. I can tell you it's 33 degrees out, but you get this little handy dandy bit of information here from GMC, and that is battery conditioning versus driving versus remote start. Now they're all at 0 because they just reset it. So at the end of this video, we'll go back here and we can kind of take a guess at how much energy we use to condition the battery versus driving versus remote start, which is going to be 0 because, well, we're not remote starting this vehicle. Now you do have heated seats, you do have a heated steering wheel, and it's always more efficient to actually heat yourself versus the cabin. And I do believe that the Hummer EV, and correct me if I'm wrong, has a heat pump, which makes it much more efficient in the winter. All right, well, let's go unplug because we are 80%. You never want to fast charge. Oh, let me turn it off and I can show you the percentage. So now it'll show you the percentage, I believe. There you go, 83%. You never really want to go over 80%. You just waste a lot of time when you're doing that because the number usually drops by quite a bit, so now we're only at 88, 87. There you go, kilowatts going into it. So I'm going to stop this and stop. And let's see how much money we end up spending, $39.13 to go from about, and I forget what the exact percentage was, but it should tell you how many kilowatts we put in. Yeah, look, 93 kilowatts of energy went in, which is, more than most EVs have for a battery size. Like I said, this does have a battery size. Now, the EPA rates this truck at 329 miles of range with the 250, like I said, kilowatt hour battery. And, that's the biggest battery in the business. And we owned the Lightning for a while, and we did find that truck was a little under-tired. So we upgraded the tire to an all-terrain, like I said, and we also put on a camper. And this number went down from about 2 on the highway to about 1.6. I know, ice is possible. Yes, I know. I can dismiss that. Now with reset, we're at 1.5. And the question is, how low will that number go? So let's hit the road and find out. I'm super excited to go back to Moab. And if you do want to see me taking this thing off-road again with the bigger tires, that video, of course, will be on our off-road YouTube channel, but TFL.com will get you there. All right, well, let's hit the road. I'm also curious to see what this thing drives like. That's a lot of unsprung weight putting on 37s, but you know what? Let me put up a different camera, and you can get kind of my point of view as we hit the highway. So let's see how this Hummer drives with these new 37s. Now, over the years, we have put on bigger tires. We have, of course, upgraded and upsized and lifted all of our trucks. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Actually, many of them. Because once we're kind of done reviewing them, we tend to kind of want to make them more off-road worthy because we live here in Colorado. And it does change the driving characteristics. It's a lot of unsprung weight. I'm not sure how much that wheel and tire combination weighs, but it's got to be close to at least 80 pounds, maybe 100 pounds. It ain't light. And so obviously more rolling resistance, more weight, and just a much bigger, beefier tire, which makes this truck much more off-road worthy. That's what happens when you make something more off-road worthy. You make it less on-road worthy, unfortunately. And that's always been the price of cool, right? I mean, there are reasons why we all try to fit into probably tighter clothes because they're cool than we should. It's kind of the same thing with trucks. And the thing I'm curious about is, like, if you upsize from a 33 to a 37, let's say on a typical heavy-duty truck, be it a Super Duty Ford or Ram or Chevy, diesel, then, you're going to lose fuel economy and you're going to lose range. But I just spent, I want to say, about 37 minutes here charging, whereas in a diesel truck, you'd probably spend about, 3 minutes at the gas station. And so it's a much higher price when you do that in an electric truck versus a regular truck. And let me give you a little bit of an editorial here. We've had this Hummer EV for, now 3-4 months. And the first comment is always piece of, what, or I'll never buy an electric vehicle, or why. And I understand that feeling, but I think it's kind of misplaced, because this is the equivalent of a diesel truck that's been emissions deleted, basically. And I mean that in all seriousness. A diesel, when you delete the emission stuff, the DEF fluid, all the filters, you gain horsepower and you gain fuel economy. This already has a ton of horsepower. What is it? Something like 1,000 horsepower, 0 to 60 in like 3.5 seconds, which will, certainly keep up with any deleted diesel heavy duty out there. 1,200 pounds of torque, give or take. And it's just an incredible piece of engineering, and that's why I love it. Is it perfect? No, but I like things that shouldn't beef. They shouldn't exist, you know? Here, I'm gonna floor it. The whole thing just, look at that. Just killed my efficiency, of course. Took it down to 1.4 from 1.5. But it was worth it. Oh, and these tires are a little bit louder. So the BFG mud terrains, you can hear them. I'll be quiet a little bit. But you can kind of hear the growl of the tires. So they are a little bit louder than your standard tires that come on this. And then these A-pillars, this is an A-pillar, do create quite a bit of wind noise in this truck. And the other thing you need to know is the faster you go, exponentially the more power you use. So the quicker I go, and there's some police officers there, I don't want to go too quickly, the more energy I will use. Now the other thing I'm curious about is, let's see how navigation works. So when you said that, alright, I think I'll just use a voice command. Navigate to Moab. Let me show you.
Sure, Moab.
So, using Google there. Oh, I'm going to make it there with 31% negative. So I have to add a charging station, so I'll do that. And there it gives me a charge point addition. And I don't know how fast charge points are, but tells you the detour. There's a 2-minute detour and a 3-minute detour. So, and they're fast charging, it says. So let's go this one. And let's start. So, according to this, I've got 283 miles to go. And I'm going to get to the next charging point and get to 324 with 14% of my battery at 176 miles of driving. And that's the other thing. You want to kind of keep between, let's say, 20 and 80% when you're driving cross country with an electric vehicle, because that's the sweet spot. That's where it charges the quickest, and you don't spend that much time sitting around waiting for the thing to charge. Even though with a 250 kilowatt hour battery, you are going to spend a lot of time sitting around waiting for it to charge. Now, the last thing I would say, I started this by saying that, you know, all of you guys who love diesel trucks, which I love too, we have a Ram 2500 Cummins, I love diesels, but this thing is a technological tour de force. Really, crazy amounts of horsepower, 4-wheel steering, crab walk, air suspension, just to name a few. A frunk. I've got, you can't see them right now, I've got a convertible just like a Jeep Wrangler. And yeah, it's expensive. We paid $112,000 for this truck, so of course it ain't cheap, but it's also kind of half-baked in some ways. That's the downside of this. You know, I'm taking it off-road quite a bit, and half the time the air suspension gives up after about 15 minutes. We go to the fast lane here. Gives up after about 15 minutes just because, you know, it's trying to keep this very heavy truck on all fours, kind of on tippy toes, and I always have trouble locking the front diff, and no matter what I try, it only locks in terrain mode. But that's a whole different conversation. That's for the off-road video. But yeah, so there are problems, but just as a technological tour de force, this thing is absolutely, you know, that, you know what, crazy, and I love that, you know what, crazy vehicles, and that's why I love the TRX, and I love this vehicle the same way. It's just, you know, left brain versus right brain. It's my head versus my heart, and they both are cool. And if you're one of those people who hates electric vehicles, I'm just going to give you a warning, I think, here. I hate to do this, but I'll give it to you. I was just at CES with Andre, and if you watched our coverage of the Ram Revolution, you know that we were there covering other electric trucks. But what's scary about CES is there were no vehicles that had anything for truck guys or gals that love to drive. It was all about autonomy. BMW introduced a car that was basically a giant screen. The whole thing was a giant screen, so you could watch movies, or you could, you know, put a camera view up instead of looking through the windshield. And that, to me, signifies that, you know, everything is heading toward autonomy. And the fact, whether it's powered by electrons or gasoline or, you know, ancient dead dinosaurs, I'm still driving this, and I still love driving it. But now the trend is for mobility and autonomy and little cubes and the stuff that we love to do, which is get behind the wheel and actually drive a vehicle and experience the power and experience the road. You know, in that BMW, they're gonna put a video game on the screen so you sit there, so you're not bored for the how many hours this is going to take me to get to Moab? 5 hours? And instead of actually, enjoying the drive, you're going to be just sitting there in some box watching the next Avengers or whatever it may be. And that's really where I think we're heading. And unfortunately, that's the part I think we should be scared of as car guys and car gals. Not whether it's powered by electricity or whether it can tow 200 or 300. All that stuff's going to get sorted out. They'll figure that out. What they'll also figure out is a way to legislate driving, and that is what terrifies me. All right, time to hit the road. Oh, guys, look at that. I am down. Let me show you. I am already down to 1.1 mile per kilowatt hour. And of course, before you start saying that these tires are in the cold is just eating up the range, I'm also going up and over Vale Pass. So keep in mind that has been all uphill, doing 75 miles an hour, which is the speed limit, but nevertheless, which exponentially uses more power. And this is the thing about electric vehicles. I would hope that, you take this one thing away from this video. They're not better, they're not worse, they're just different. Really, they're just different. And you just got to get used to how different they are and learn to kind of drive them and calculate them based on that fact that they're different. All right, well, I've made it to Glenwood. As you can tell, the weather has been pretty rough, to say the least. We got a mixture of snow and rain. That's certainly making driving challenging. This is Glenwood Canyon right now. So far, I've gone almost 80 miles. And if you're wondering, right now, you probably can't see it on camera, but turn the camera a little bit. I'm at 1.5 miles per kilowatt hour, and about down to a half a battery or so. I think that's a half a battery, one of those clicks. Once again, it'd be nice if I had actual percentage as opposed to just clicks. Temperature 35 degrees, and the truck's doing well. The tires seem fine. Feel like I've got plenty of grip. Of course, they are brand new, and so as tires get older, they become worse. But for now, this feels like about as bad as it can get in terms of weather conditions for a road trip. Having said that, it is awfully beautiful, and I do love Colorado in the winter. It's just when people get in an accident in this canyon that the love kind of tends to dissipate because traffic gets backed up. So I'm hoping to get through the canyon without somebody creating a bottleneck, which happens actually more than you'd think. Oh, just sped up to 60. Speed limit is 60. At least the good news is feels like the rain and the snow are letting up a little bit. All right, this has been just a little update from the road. According to the truck's navigation, I'm supposed to go all the way for another 195 miles, hour 24. That's what the navigation says. To Grand Junction, where I believe there's a Electrify America in a Sam's Club I've been to before. Last time I think we stopped there as well, which is good because it's also by Chick-fil-A. And kind of missed lunch today. I've been driving, so it'd be nice to have a late lunch. It's about 2 o'clock right now. And yeah, as prices have dropped recently, at least on the Tesla side for electric cars, right? They just dropped the price of the Model Y by $13,000. And I suspect that Hyundai and Ford with the Mach-E and the Ioniq 5 and all the other electric car manufacturers are going to have to do something to match it. We're going to get a lot more electric cars out there. Our Bolt that we just bought, after credits, is a $17,000 car. We bought it for $25,000, and in Colorado we get $2,000 plus $7,500. So basically you're at $17,000, $18,000 for an electric Bolt that gets 259 miles of range. So as much as people, I think in the comments, love to hate on electric cars, a $17,000 electric car, that's a hard thing to pass up if you're looking for something not to commute across country, but it will make, I think, the charging networks start to fill up. As you saw back when I stopped, there was nobody else charging, but I'm going to say give it 6 months. And if these electric car wars actually do start, then I think people's pocketbooks will vote more than their comments, because at the end of the day, if you charge at home, which most people still do, if you can do that, if you don't live in an apartment or a city dweller, it's dirt cheap to fill up an electric car, even with gas prices being in the $3 range. All right, let's keep going. Next stop, hopefully, Grand Junction, and then Moab. So the speed limit here, even though it says 50, it's really 60 for vehicles of this weight. And I just turned on Super Cruise, so you can see how that works. So right now I've got my hands off the wheel, and the vehicle is driving itself through the canyon, which is pretty impressive. I think Super Cruise is probably the best system out there. Period. It just works really well. And as you can tell, holding the camera in one hand and looking down the road with my eyes at the other, because it does monitor your eyes. It uses this guy right there to make sure you're watching, and I am watching, but yeah, it works really well. It actually also even does automatic lane changes. Let me show you. So signal to change, lane change. Lane change complete. Yeah, it works really well. Okay, speed limit is now sped up to 65. So let's go up to the speed limit. And let's not block the fast lane. Let's move over. I'm gonna lane change again. And there we go. Look at that. How cool is that? Now I know I just did a whole diatribe about autonomy, being the death of driving. And there are situations where it's nice having the car drive for you. I just don't want to be in a pod where there is a yoke that retracts and I don't have the option to drive myself. And you know what'll happen, right? There'll be a politician or two out there who will say, 30,000 people in America die on our roads, and computers don't make mistakes, so let's make autonomy required and optional, at which point I'm going to be very sad. Very, very sad indeed. I'm just hoping that it's very hard to get level 5 autonomy, so it may take longer. Look how beautiful Colorado is. This is why I love it. Look at that. All right, hopefully next stop, Grand Junction. Well, there goes Super Cruise. The weather has turned really nasty again, as you can tell, and Super Cruise just turned itself off, which is understandable. Maybe what's happening is the sensors are getting clogged up with snow, and that's really the difference between level 2 autonomy and level 5 autonomy. Level 5 means the car can drive itself under any conditions at any time without the aid of a driver watching it. So we're still far from that, thank God. But as a road trip, this is becoming quite the interesting Hummer-ish road trip, because the weather has gone from bad to worse. And I gotta say, it's great being in a truck. I just love the fact that I'm up high, and hopefully I've got the right vehicle for the right weather conditions. All-wheel drive, air suspension, mud terrains. And it's just a really good road trip vehicle. This feel really confident. There's a truck hitting puddles, and the only thing I'm a little worried about is initially these Hummer EVs had a recall for the battery box. I guess it wasn't sealed properly, and they recalled them to have them sealed properly. Ours apparently wasn't affected by that because ours certainly didn't have that recall, and there was no reason to take it in and have it repaired. And I think the recall was for a battery box that leaked when it got really rainy and wet. And as you can tell, it's really rainy and wet. But in case you're curious, I'm at 1.4 miles per kilowatt hour, doing the speed limit 76 in this weather. That's about as fast as I dare to go. Maybe I'll go 75. Let's take it down one, which is the speed limit, by the way. And I've gone 120 miles so far and used about, oh gosh, maybe 35, maybe 40% of the battery. So if you double that, you're at 80%, which would give you 280, and then you have another 20% left over. So potentially you could have a range of at 300-ish miles, which is pretty incredible on a yucky day like this. But I'm heading to the charger, and we'll see what the final number is when we get to the charger, and how quickly it charges. Hopefully it knows. And I'm heading to the EA station. That's the route to the EA station in 52 minutes, another 56 miles, and it'll condition the battery so that I'm not stuck at the Sam's Club. There's nothing wrong with Sam's Club, but I wouldn't want to be stuck there for an hour while I get the next 80% so I can make it all the way to Moab, which I won't need 80%, but Moab doesn't actually have any DC fast chargers, which can be a little tricky with a ginormous battery. So overnight, hopefully it'll charge a little bit on level 2, but the battery's so big it takes a while. All right. Well, here we are at Sam's Club, and it's about 5 miles out of the way because I had to drive, like I say, 5 miles from the highway. That's that's a ways to get to a charger. If this was a gas vehicle, obviously you could just pull off the side of the highway, fill up, and be gone. But it's not, and I want a fast charger. So at this point, you may be wondering, what did the cold weather and the 37s do to this truck's mile per kilowatt? And let me show you right there. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. There you go, 1.3. And like I say, we were getting about 1.5. And oh my God, there's a bunch of cars here, but there is a Mustang parked here for some reason. Don't ask me why. But at least there's 2 stations that are open. Let's pick the one that is a 350 because it's going to be better. We have started preconditioning. That's 150. I'm hoping that's a 350 over here. I've got a Volkswagen and that's a 350. Good. All right, let's pick the 350. Back into it. Like I said, you may be wondering what that did to my energy usage, and it did make it worse. Is it the weather? Is it the tires? Hard to say at this point. Trying to back up here. Let me zip up, and so you can see kind of my camera is all yucky now. There we go, backing up into the station. Don't want to hit an Ioniq. That would be bad. This is a big truck after all. Okay, backing up. So yeah, I've gone from like 1.5 to 1.3. And of course that ain't grand. But you know, you want to look cool and you want a more off-road capable truck. That's the price to pay. Now let's talk about how much energy I used. So I was at 83% when I left the Electrify America in Frisco. I've gone 177 miles at 1.3 miles per kilowatt hour. And let me turn this off. And now we'll see what percentage I'm at right now. Come on, turn off. Maybe I have to open the door. 24%. So about 80% of the battery I've used to get here. So I have about, no, sorry, not 80%. I was at 80, went to 24, so 60% of the battery to get here, which isn't, all that bad, which means that I had about 40% of the battery left because I didn't start full. And that, of course, means that at 173, another 40% on top of that. You do the math. I'm really bad at math, but that'll tell you how far I could have gone potentially if I had drained the battery, but you never do, of course. All right, so let's charge up on this 350 kilowatt hour charger and see how much power we're gonna get. All right, here we go. Initiating charging. Come on, EA, you can do this. You can give me some power. I certainly need it. Come on. There's one more left that's empty, and that is 150. I'm hoping that this truck can take in more than 150. Come on. Come on, start the charge. There it goes. Continue. 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 I think it's still trying to charge. Oh, it is definitely starting to charge according to the truck. Here we go, finally got to the right screen. All right, here's the right screen. I'm at 230 kilowatts of charging speed, which is really good. It's not, 350. I've seen as much as 362, but nevertheless, it's really good. So, was it worth going for the 37 BFG mud terrains? Yes, I think it was. If I look at the truck now, you know how when you upgrade tires, what happens is it just looks right. And I can't help but think that if this were on 35s, it just would look kind of weeny and goofy. But on 37s, it looks right. Now, will that help us off-road? You have to come back to all TFL, and we'll figure that out when I take it off-road in Moab tomorrow. But for now, I just want to thank you guys for watching, joining me on this road trip. I know the weather was kind of icky, but the truck did really well. 170 miles is about as far as I want to go without stopping anyway. You can do the math yourself, see if you think it's worth it. The downside, of course, and I hate to end on a negative note, but I get to go spend a few minutes roaming around Sam's Club and seeing what there is to see. There it is right there. Maybe more than a few minutes, maybe at least a half hour, because Moab is still probably another 100 miles away, and then I got to come back because there's no more fast chargers between here and Moab, and there are no fast chargers in Moab, so that means I got to charge at the hotel overnight. Hopefully they'll have a charger. If not, I got to find a public charger, at least a level 2. Yeah, it's more complicated when you're part of the brave new electric world, but that's what we're here for. That's why we're doing these things, so that you don't have to. All right, as a little coda to the video, I promised to tell you how much we used for battery conditioning and driving, and apparently zero, because I shut the truck off and I guess I lost those values. So I do apologize for that. But if you're wondering about calibration, which you might be, keep in mind we have had this recalibrated. It comes with 35s from the factory, but you can calibrate up to 37s. I believe the dealer charged us a couple $100 to do that. And then full disclosure, of course, the wheels we got from GMC, because remember when I got stuck? Let me turn it off. Remember when I got stuck in the highway? I'll choose a 2-lane left turn. Well, as an apology, they gave us the wheels, and the BFGs are from BFG. But we figure we spent about, if you actually had to buy the stuff, which we didn't, you'd spend about $5,000 upgrading the gold wheels and the tires and the calibration. So it's not cheap. All right, I just had a little bit of a walk at Sam's Club. Let's see how long I've spent here. So $51, wow, 120 kilowatt hours of energy delivered, 7 minutes left until 80%. I've been charging for a total of 41. Yeah, so all you Cummins slash Duramax slash Super Duty guys were like, I would have been long gone. And true that. Anyway, there you have it. A road trip that was unlike any other because of the cold and of the weather. And now, of course, the sun has come out. Finally. All right, 100 more miles or so to get to Moab, and then a little bit of off-roading tomorrow. I can't wait. I am so excited to go and see how these 37s do in Moab. All right. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you checking out all the channels and sticking with me. I'll see you guys in Moab. Ciao.